What's up, y'all? So, yes, the title is correct. I was married to a African, and I turned his ass into INS. Okay. Now, he is still here in the United States because he did try to reach out to me several years ago. I believe he's living in Arlington, Texas now. Okay, so when we first met, I was very young. I was 29 when I got married to him, and we dated for quite some time. And when we were dating, and he decided to move in with me. Come to find out, he was dating another American girl when he decided to come and be with me. So my understanding, he lived with her and moved out on her abruptly to come stay with me. Okay, and if I had known that he was already in a relationship with somebody, him and I would have never started going together in the first place. But anyway, we started a life together, and I was noticing a few things about him that that didn't set with me. Okay, so I knew that he was trying to look for a job and everything, and he went to places called Manpower, and those are the people that employ you, by the day. They don't need too much documentation or anything. They just employ you. Like sometimes I see people standing out by 7-Eleven or Home Depot or U-Haul, and they ask if anybody needs any help, moving or anything like that. Okay, so he was doing that, and I remember one time we got a phone call, and I had answered the phone, and somebody asked for his friend. And this happened a couple times, and one time that they called, and I said it out loud, and after I got the phone, he told me, he was like, well, he said, I've been using so-and-so's name and social security so I could try to get a job. And then I just looked at him and I said, well, I was like, that's fraud. That's illegal. And he was like, yeah, but I need to hurry up and try to get a job. He said, I'm not trying to get nobody into trouble. And he knows that I'm using it. So I was like, at the end of the day, it's still, that's still not the way that you do things here in America. I was like, I thought your status was, you were getting everything taken care of so that you're able to be legal. So, me not knowing anything about this type of shenanigans that they do, that people do to try to become citizens here in the United States and bring their own family members here. This was like I said in the late 90s. I didn't know anything about that, and back in the day when it came to that type of thing, I was naive. So anyway, him and I got together and everything, and relationship grew. And from my understanding, he was not using his friend's information because I told him that was dangerous, and he was taking the chance of, getting somebody in trouble or getting locked up or something like that. And I was like, if you're doing that and using this address, yeah, you can't do that. I don't want to have no part of that. Number one, because I have my own child that I'm raising, and I'll be damned if you're gonna put our life in jeopardy because of something that you're trying to do. So anyway, of course, he always had something up his sleeve. Okay. As we got deeper into the relationship, when we would go out and everything, and when, if you don't know, when Africans party, they party. Okay, they have a good time, they have good food, good people come together, good music, and they party for a long time, 24 hours maybe, and they all just have a good time and get together. Okay, so it's been on a couple occasions that whenever I went with him to a few of these places and things, some of the females wouldn't greet me properly, you know what I'm saying? Or they would do the side eye thing or start talking to him in his language, and you could tell he was a little flirtatious about it, right? So all I could do was sit there because, I'm an outsider. I don't know any of their language and none of that. Some of the people would, be hospitable and, offer me different things, and he would bring me around and introduce me to certain people and that type of thing. But most of the time I just sat there, okay, feeling out of place. Okay, so eventually we had discussed about moving to another state, and he was deciding to move to Minnesota. So, I thought about it and everything, and he was asking me, would I want to uproot, and I would have to take my son with me, of course, and, finish school out there. And he was telling me that the place that he was trying to go to is, really low key, and he knows that he'll be able to get a job out there because somebody out there will hook him up because he's got a friend that's out there and that's waiting for him, to come out there and be there to get him set up. So I was like, okay, well, this sounds okay to me because I was ready to leave the state where I was in anyway. I just wanted a fresh new start. So being as though him and I was trying to be together, I said, let me just give it a try. You're always nervous when you go somewhere different, especially when you ain't got no family in another state. Okay, so he decided to go out there and try it out and be out there. When he got out there, him and his buddy's name was Frank. So his buddy got out there, got him all hooked up and everything. And, he sounded like he was very happy and everything, getting everything in place and telling me not to worry and all this type of stuff. So, a few months went by and everything. We're still talking every day, multiple times a day. He keeps giving me the update on things and how things are going. So after some time, trying to reach him began to be kind of crazy, okay? Because he wasn't where he said he was at, okay? Because every time I called, he wasn't there, okay? So then when he did call, it was always like a whisper all the time or a certain part of the day that he would be talking to me or whatever. And, we would talk to each other. We would email each other. He would send me pictures in the mail and that type of thing and give me things to do, like to send him and everything because he was, trying to prepare out there. That's where we were deciding to be. Okay, so a couple times he sent me some pictures and everything. And I noticed in the background was like feminine stuff, not something that a male would choose, as a bachelor, living with a bachelor, because he kept saying that he was still living with his friend named Frank. Okay, so flags were brewing, signs were showing, and I knew that was a lie. So anyway, I let that, let it go. He was flying back here, to be with us until we got ourselves together and my son could finish school, for the school year and everything. So he was flying back and forth, to spend time with me and everything so that I wouldn't feel like, he had abandoned us. So he was coming back and forth, and I noticed that he would leave the email open, okay? And it had his friend's name connected to it. And he tried to say he has to leave the email open because it's the quickest way that he can get in communication with his friend Frank, just in case a job offer had opened up or somebody was trying to reach him. So, I ain't think nothing of it and everything because I knew he was going through a process of, filing for his papers and all that type of stuff. And next thing I know, when he was here to visit, he was like, well, why don't we just get married? Because, we're going to be married eventually. Why don't we just get married while we're here? And, I thought that was a good idea and everything. So, a couple of his friends came over and everything, and I noticed they had these passports. And he brought out this little kit. Looked like this little sewing kit. So him and his friend one time was sitting at the table, and they looked like they was doctoring up passports. Okay, back in the day, they used to be able to sew documents, and they got these stamps all rigged up and everything. Looked like it was fraudulent to me because they had their own stamps and they had their own stamp pad, and they were doing stuff. So, I was kind of side-eyeing it and watching it. And this is before, anybody thought about recording anybody for evidence and that type of stuff, okay? We still talking about in the late 90s and early 2000s, right? So, I kind of brushed it off a little bit. And I'm thinking that maybe he was just trying to repair the book because the book ripped or something like that. Just being so naive and airbrainish about it, because I didn't want to believe that he was doing some sneaky shit. Okay, so one time he saw my notary stuff, and my notary commission hadn't ended, and he was like, well, won't you send that out to me when I get home and everything so we can get it transferred out there? And I'm saying to myself, yeah, you got something up your sleeve. But I said it out loud to him. I said, no, I'm not doing that. I said, because I'm registered for this state. I said, when I get out there, I said, maybe I'll redo it and become a notary out there in Minnesota. So he was like, okay. He said, you sure you don't want to just go ahead and just let me take it with me out there? And I'm saying no, because I need that. Those are official documents, and my name and everything is on it. So I always had this feeling, you know what I'm saying, that I never wanted to drop my last name. That if I was to get married, just to tag it, hyphenate it. And we never got I never added him to my lease, never added him to my bank account or none of that, because, he didn't stay here too long because we were in the process of going to another state. So anyway, school was over, and we had 2 trips planned for the summer. I had decided that I wanted to take my son to Disney. A family and I, one of my buddies and my family and I, we got together and we were going to take the kids to Disney. So before that, the week before, I went out and saw him. But before I went, we ended up getting married. Okay, before all of this, we got married here in the state. While he was here, I noticed that he was picking out rings that didn't look like wedding bands. Okay, so that was another red flag for me. My ring looked like a official wedding ring. It was an engagement ring and a band. Okay, his was like a regular stylish ring. Okay, and he was trying to make it seem like he didn't want it to look like a wedding band. And I asked him, I was like, what's up with that? Why are you picking these rings like that? And he kind of laughed it off and tried to act all slick about it. So anyway, we ended up getting married, and something in my spirit said, don't do it. And I'll be damned if I ain't do it anyway. Not knowing what the hell I was getting ready to get myself into. But when your gut instinct tell you something, please listen. Please listen. Because it was a hell of a ride. So the next 6 months was something else. Okay, so after the summer, came, and I went out there to visit Minnesota. I stayed out there for a week. That was my first trip. He had booked me a flight. And I told him that I didn't want a connecting flight. So what did he do? He booked me a connecting flight. Okay, first time flying, scared to death. So I got on the flight and everything, did what I had to, got out there. And he came to stay with me at the hotel. So come to find out, and he did have a job out there. He did have a job. Come to find out, he was already hooked up with some female out there. Okay. She was an African too. It was times that he would come when he wasn't working. We had planned, those were the days that he planned to take me around the city and that type of thing. Only on a certain side of the city, so that he wouldn't, I wouldn't get caught up by seeing the girl that he was with. So anyway, the girl knew about it. The girl knew all about the game that he was running. Okay, because she had to be honest with him because he had to communicate with me as well. But being as though I didn't know his language, because he was from Cameroon, his lingo and that type of thing, it was easy to try to run game. So if he had to talk to me in the house or whatever, it wouldn't have been a big deal, okay, to her. She played the game. Okay, so what she did was she allowed him to stay with me at the hotel. And in the morning time, before he would go to work, he would go to her house. Okay? That's where he was living at. He was living there. 9 chances out of 10, he picked a hotel that was close by where they lived at, where they stayed at. Okay? I just didn't know it. Come to think of it now, yeah, that's probably what he did. Okay? Being slick. So he went over there one time, and I called his job for something. Because I wanted to go out while he was at work. And I think I had a question or whatever. So I ended up calling him. So the person that answered the phone said he wasn't there. He was coming in late. I said, okay. He didn't tell me that. And he never thought that I would call his job for anything. So, of course, he wasn't going to tell me anything. So anyway, after he got to work and he called me because he got the message. And he left early. When he came back, he smelled like female boudet. Okay. And It was a kickback, and I could smell his odor. So I told him about it right away. Cause already in my mind, I already knew that he was dealing with somebody. Okay, I just wanted to put the seal on it. You know what I'm saying? By me going out there and checking things out and everything. I'm knowing that this is what he's doing. Because when he was here in the States and he left that email open, I noticed that the communication was wide open. Okay, and he was typing and everything. He tried to make it seem like, oh, it wasn't, it wasn't a big deal. It was just to keep it open just in case something came about. First of all, dudes don't communicate like that. Okay? Dudes don't communicate like that. And if you that pressed for a dude, then you gay. Okay? So at the end of the day, the lingo that was coming through on that email, because I had a friend that could translate it for me. Okay? Without lying about it. So the lingo was a female. The conversation that was coming through was female stuff, relationship stuff. And then when he tried to throw me off track, he was like, come and say hi to Frank. So I said, hey, Frank, what's up? And the first thing that Frank said was, hi, how are you? Why are you policing him all the time? Okay, and I responded back in American. I said, nobody's policing him. He told me to come and say hello to you. I said, this is his choice to keep this email out. I said, he's acting very suspicious. I said, policing him? I said, he's grown. What I got to police him for? If I need to police him, then I don't need to be with him. And all I got to do is call 911 for the real police. Have a good day. That was that. So anyway, they played it off. He was like, well, when you coming out to visit? That type of stuff. Trying to play it off. I just left it. I didn't even answer after that. But anyway, once I got to Minnesota and everything, and, he came back smelling like Boudet. Yeah, he jumped up, went and cleaned himself and everything, and came and laid back down and was getting ready to take me out and all this type of stuff just to throw me off, because we went to a Mall of America. Okay, then we went out to eat and that type of thing. Okay, so never took me to his friend's house. The friend Frank. I never got to meet the friend Frank. Okay, supposed friend. Okay, Frank. Okay, so some other guy, he introduced me to some other guy. And I forget his name. But I started seeing papers laying around with the attorney that we had here in Maryland, because he wanted me to bring some documents, so he can get a communication with that attorney. So he was trying to get me to go back and forth between that Maryland attorney and him while he was in Minnesota. So he had his resume and all that, and this girl's name kept coming up. And it just looked suspicious. Okay, looked suspicious. So at that time, people had cell phones and things like that, and he had this number written down and all that. So being as suspicious as I was, I called it. Living in the same town, I called it. And it was a female that answered it. Okay, so after she answered it, I introduced myself to her. She hung up. Okay, at the end of the day, she must didn't say nothing to him until like later on. Okay, so at the end of the day, he kept saying, oh, that's just his friend. That's his friend's girlfriend. He just needed her for a reference for a job and this and that and the third. But the name kept coming up in their conversation. Okay, the name kept coming up just constantly. So I said, okay, that must be the chick. That must be the chick. So yeah, I was out of line by calling her, but I wanted to introduce myself, because let her know, yeah, I'm on to your game. You can't fool me. I'm a coach, not a player. So at the end of the day, I went ahead and just kept playing it. So after he took me to the airport and everything, once that week was up, I let him know that I'm done. And I got home and everything. I said, yep. I said, I want a divorce. Oh, he flipped out, had a hard time trying to understand that. And from there, I stopped taking calls from him. Okay. So what I ended up doing, because I found out he was trying to use my information as far as like my address and everything. And I told him that, no, that you're not using my address for anything, because I'm not sure what you're doing. And you're no longer living here. You're in Minnesota. Since we had planned to move there, then you needed to change your address and use whoever address you're using. at the end of the day. Then on top of it, I got a phone call from his friend that he was using the information about. So he asked me, did I know about it? I said, you know what? He mentioned it to me, and I told him that that was not a good idea, and I did not believe what he said. He said, because you gave him permission to use his documents. So he was like, that's a lie. He said, I got into a traffic accident, and somebody bought a car in my name. And the insurance company is flagging it for having two addresses. I said, oh, yeah? Well, this is the information I have. You need to go ahead and get in contact with him and rectify it, because he's out there with this female, and this is where they live at. Okay. So he was sending me documentations from the exact address from where they was living at. That girl's name kept coming up. That was another thing. So I proceeded to turn his ass in at the end of the day. I don't care how common or cold anybody say. First of all, you're not going to play in my face and try to jeopardize me and my son. Okay, while you try to play these games and you done moved on and you trying to play these games just to get a status and you living with somebody. Maybe she didn't have her paperwork and she couldn't file anything for him because he was trying to go for asylum. Okay, so I learned these things, as I went through. So when I was talking to the guy, I guess the inspector, I don't know what you call him, for the INS and everything, and I gave him all the information. Okay, they wanted to check it out, make sure that what I was saying was correct and everything, and I told him, and we noticed that he was going by different names. Sometimes he would use his brother's name. Sometimes he would use his first name. Sometimes he would use his middle name. So he had different alias names. Okay. So they found out to be true. For it to be true, everything that I gave him, the information, I called the attorney. I told the attorney what was going on to let her know. Because what you're not going to do, like I said, is try to hem me and my family up. Okay, so after that, the attorney went and arrested him. They pulled up on him getting out of the car, and they arrested his ass. So next thing I know, I'm getting all these phone calls and everything. He's calling me, telling me he's sorry, and asked me why, him and I can't work things out, and what I'm thinking is not true, and all this type of stuff. Steady line, okay? Steady line. Not telling the truth. And I told him, don't call this phone no more, because I'm done. I'm filing divorce, and I'm moving on. So after some time, somebody called me. I don't know if it was his attorney up there to try to get me to drop the charges, try to convince me to drop the charges or whatever, to try to get him out. I said, look at here. I'm telling you for the last time. You go back and you tell him, don't call this phone no more. Just forget about me completely. I am filing for divorce. And no, I am not dropping no charges. Whatever y'all got going on, y'all deal with it. I'm out of it. I'm in a different state. I'm out of it. Don't call here no more. So whoever it was didn't call no more. But he kept calling from the jail some way. I called the jail. You better get him from calling here before he have another charge. So they went to him and they told him about calling me. Because one of the friends called me that was here. The friend that he was using his information called and told me that, yeah, that was the story. That he said that you have abandoned him and you called the jail and told them that he was harassing you. I said, yeah, because he was. He kept calling. He kept calling and kept calling and kept calling. And I told him that it was over. I don't care what he say. I don't care what he do. At this point, I'm done. You played the game and you got found out and you weren't good at the game. You tried to get people in trouble with what you were doing with your false documents, because I found other papers that he had left behind, that he had went on and tried to do a fake itinerary and get documents, try to sweet talk whoever the lady was at the airlines, you know what I'm saying, to put itinerary from Switzerland to wherever, just to go get a some type of paperwork from the embassies in wherever they were at, just so that their friends or loved ones, or maybe he could travel in and out of the United States. I don't know. It was all a game. But yeah, I turned that ass in. You play with me, and I'm a true American. I'm not to be played with. So at the end of the day, it looked like he used me. All that time, I'm thinking that we building a life together, and He didn't already built a life and he was getting ready to move on. So while he was locked up, found out that girl was pregnant. He ended up telling me the truth that he was with this girl, and he tried to say his brother had a baby, and they named the baby after me. I said, that's a lie, because I looked at that picture. I said, that's a lie. In the letter, because I kept the letter as a receipt back then. I looked at her. That baby looked just like him. It was a girl. And that was his sister sitting right next to the baby. And that was his brother on the other end of the couch. Okay? Because we was together long enough where I got to see pictures of his mom, his dad, and his siblings. Okay? Talked to him quite a few times. Okay? So anyway, never talked to his father, but I was around when he talked to his mom. That type of stuff. So anyway, I looked at it, I was like, this motherfucker's crazy. So anyway, he ended up having a child. So, make a long story short with that, since I already told that long story. Somehow, years later, he tried to reach out and say that he was in town. That let me know that this shit was bullshit. Okay? He probably got to stay in the United States because that girl was pregnant and was about to have his baby. And maybe her status was, official, that she was considered a permanent resident of the United States. So anyway, matter of fact, I was at work and my son had told me that somebody was knocking at the door, and I told him to be very quiet and look and see who it was, and it was him. So he left a note on the door. My son gave me the information, and I ended up calling the number that he left. He was like, I'm gonna come by and see you. I want to see you. I apologize to you and all this type of stuff. I just want to see you. He said, I feel real bad. I feel real embarrassed about everything. I just want to apologize to you. I said, it's no need. It's no need. And please don't come back to my house and leaving no notices on the door. I said, I need for you to move on. I said, it's been some time now. I said, you out of jail. I said, so that lets me know that your status is okay. I said, you need to move on. Okay. So I pulled up. Something said, look around. Because, see, he didn't know what car I was driving. Something said, look around. So I looked around and I spotted him. So I ended up pulling off because I didn't want him to see me walking towards the house. Because where he was parked at, he could see if anybody was walking towards the building where I lived at. So I waited for a while. And, where I parked at, I could park further away where I could keep my eye on his vehicle what he was riding in until he left. Then when I went in and proceeded. And unfortunately, when I called, the number I called from was my number that I called, and I could block his number anyway. So anyway, he obviously had something up his sleeve. So anyway, there was one time that I thought that, he was gone and everything, and he ended up coming from around the other way. So when I was going to the house, I saw him, and I stopped in my tracks. I was like, golly. I didn't know how long he was here for, didn't care, thought that everything was cool. And I'm trying to go back and forth to work. I'm, getting myself together and everything. He walked up on me and everything, smiling and everything, like, he was so happy to see me and all this type of stuff. And he was trying to apologize and all of that. And I stood out there and I talked to him because I didn't want him nowhere near my house. I was not trying to let him come to my house to talk and all that. I just wanted whatever he had to say. Let's finish this conversation. Let's wrap this up and let's move on. So he had these papers in his hand. I noticed he had these papers in his hand, and it had the title of the old attorney that was here in the States. And I said, yeah, this was about some type of bull crap that he had up his sleeve. So anyway, I wrapped up the conversation with him, and I told him I gotta go. And we left it just like that. So some way, somehow, he sent me a message through social media. This is when social media started to get, real popular and everything. And I blocked him. I blocked him. He still kept calling me his wife and all this type of stuff. And come to find out, he's in Arlington, Texas. Okay, so from the information that I put in, because I wanted to know any information that I could get to block this dude out. Okay, he's with this lady. Okay, they got kids and they've moved on, which I'm happy about. Anyway, I had to block him completely from everything because he kept trying to reach out. So at the end of the day, he played games. He played games. And I know that's what Africans do. They play games. The second time I got involved with an African, okay, it was years later. But him and I was friends. We was real good friends. Oh my God. He was different from anybody. Like I said, I don't prejudge people. I get to know people. And anyway, I could tell, that this guy was really crazy about me. He wasn't a boy. He was a man. And, 2 years after, we were good friends and everything. And then he had met my son and everything. Because I don't let people just meet my child. Okay? I have to get to know you and all this type of stuff before I let you, come into my personal space. Never came to my house or nothing like that. I would always come to his house, pick him up. We would go out. He was very Christian-like, very nice, very friendly guy. And like I said, we worked at the same place, and we had different schedules, I guess. And but all the people was like, he really likes you, and this and that and the third. But we were really close. We were really close for 2 years. And after the second year, he asked me would I marry him, and I'm thinking it's all good. And everything, we cool. Everything was good. Everything was working out fine. And everybody got along. And everything was working out right. So I decided to marry him. That was the wrong move. After we got married, he changed. It's almost like he liked to see me suffer through things. He would get a kick out of that. Okay? So the people that he was around is some of the people that I had to be around because we had ended up working together. So I told him that I was ready to leave the job because it started to be real stressful, and I got tired of dealing with, the nursing staff that I was dealing with, which was majority of them were African. I didn't like the games that they played, and some of them were jealous that him and I was together. I said, I think it's time for me to look for something else. You know what I'm saying? I said, because we need more money, and I want to get another house and everything. And we have things that we want to do. We wanted to get advanced in the relationship. So after we had got married and everything, and I had told him, I said, I think I'm ready to leave the job. And he was like, okay, if you're ready to leave, I'll support you with that. So, I was really stressed out about stuff. And I was working till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and everything. And, trying to finalize stuff. And after that, I left the job. So the people that he was dealing with, some of them turned against me. Okay. And there was one black lady that used to work there. We was good friends. She even turned against me. Okay. So I don't know what that was all about. Didn't care. Anyway, I left there and I went to go work for a doctor's office and then eventually the hospital. So there was some times where I was like really stressed out, and I noticed that he enjoyed to see me suffer. He enjoyed to see me cry. And I didn't understand that. I did not understand that for the life of me. And he told me about when he was with his wife, how he used to hit her, and every time she cried and everything, he used to get some type of, some energy from it. And I thought that was the sickest shit I had ever heard of. Okay, that sounded like some abusive shit. So anyway, after I left that job and everything, and he eventually left that job and got another job. So we began to have a little bit of problems because I noticed that he started to develop this pattern of disappearing on Fridays when he didn't have to work. So in his bag, he used to have this whole thing of rubbers, and he was unpacking everything and all this type of stuff. And, being as suspicious as I used to count them motherfuckers. Okay. And I ain't gonna lie. I used to count them. I counted them. And when I counted them, few of them would be missing. That's how I knew he was cheating. So I called him out on it. And He tried to deny it at first, but then he went ahead and said it. So I put him out. I immediately threw his stuff out. I tossed every bit of his belongings out. Everything. Because I asked him, I said, do you want to work this out or what do you want to do? He didn't want to work it out, so I tossed his ass out that very day. I ain't give him no chance to gather his things, prepare himself, none of that. I just started tossing shit out. Okay? I noticed that when he got me a financial card, a credit card, instead of him wanting to use his, he wanted to use mine. Charge mine up so that I be responsible for it and he be okay with the money that he had. Okay? Acting like he didn't trust me to pay the rent and that type of stuff. Asking me for receipts and all that. And I went ahead and gave it to him and everything, because I'm thinking, maybe he had some trust issues in the past and all that. But anyway, at the end of the day, when I found out his ass was cheating, I threw his ass out that very day. And that's how we ended up getting divorced. We didn't even last a whole year. And that was the sickest thing that I think I had witnessed from a person. Just trying to get your jollies off of somebody going through a stressful time or being stressed out. You know what I'm saying? He liked to see me suffer at the end of the day, and I thought that was sick. But being as though that was his problem and the fact that he was cheating, that was a wrap. So, so my experience dealing with African men has not been great. Has not been great. Because even when I was working at the hospital before I met my husband, there was another guy that was just infatuated with me, and he was African as well. And I don't talk to a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? So when I do, this has been like years in between. So then, he introduced himself and everything, and something that happened to my car one time, and he was around. He so happened to be around, and this guy that was, infatuated with me, he fixed my car. So we ended up talking and everything, and he told me, every time he see me and everything, he scared to ask me out. He wanted to ask me out and everything, and I told him, I said, you don't have to be afraid. I was like, I appreciate you fixing my car. I was like, because you didn't really have to do that. But I appreciate you. And I know who you are because I see you at the job and all this type of stuff. So we ended up going out and everything. And come to find out, his ass was married. 2 boys. And he was married. How I found out? After we went out and he picked us up and he had his 2 boys in there. Okay. And then we drove all the way to his house late at night. And his wife was at the door. So they must have been separated. But you brought me into a position where this lady could do something to me. Or I could possibly do something to her. I'm on her territory. Y'all still married. And I'm riding with her 2 kids. And you bring me to y'all's house? Anyway, he told me that him and his wife was not together. She lived upstairs, he lived downstairs, and they were just together for the kids. Okay. At the end of the day, you still married. So see, my experience with African men have not been the greatest, okay, because they have a tendency to run game. Okay. Even Black American men run game. And all I have to say is, if you're not good at it, you should really stop doing it at the end of the day. Because even my American husband that I ended up marrying years later, when I got to my 50s, you know what I'm saying? He wasn't good at it. Because I met him in my 30s and my mid 30s, and he was in his early 40s, and he wasn't good at it. I left him. Okay. We didn't get back together till like 7 years later. After 6 years after I broke up with him. Okay. We would communicate a little bit. And so anyway, by the time he came back, he was sick. He was okay for a little while, and then come to find out he was sick and didn't even know it. And that's the husband that passed away in 2022. But at the end of the day, I'm exhausted from relationships. I'm thinking that these people got enough common sense and they appreciate being treated how I want to be treated. You know what I'm saying? Because I know how to bring people peace. I don't like to cause a lot of confrontation. Nobody want to wake up to a whole bunch of nagging and all that type of stuff. But when you show me something and I'm into you, see, I love unconditionally. Okay? And half the time I know them better than they know them damn selves. Stuff that they don't think that I recognize, yes, I recognize. Okay, so that's why I said if you're not good at cheating, you shouldn't be doing it. Because at the end of the day, if you're a player, just understand I'm a coach. And I recognize a lot of things. I'm what you call an old observer. And I don't like to play games, and nor do I like to share my men. Okay? And I don't think the men would like to share their female. I'm not a promiscuous person. And it takes a lot for me to trust you. So once I let down my guard and you show me that you're a piece of shit and I shouldn't have trusted you, yeah, then I withdraw from it. And then I'm done completely. I'm not playing those type of games. I don't go back and forth. And you can't call me to say this, and you can't call me to say that. Because once you show me something, and that I have laid with you after you done laid with somebody else, that means I've shared my intimacy with you and the next person. And the same thing that you probably do to me, you do to her. I don't care. I just don't even want to think about that. Yeah, it's a wrap. No longer will I share. And if we married, that right there was supposed to be a sacred vow anyway. So anyway, yes, I've been married to Africans, 2 Africans, and 1 American, and yeah, the 2 didn't turn out right, and the last one, it ended in death. I'm okay now. I don't need to be involved with anybody else. My last husband that I was with, we was together for a long time. And I knew after him that was going to be it for me. Relationships are terrible when you don't have people that are like-minded and want the same thing that you want as far as like being loyal. I don't know what happened to the loyalty in relationships. Everybody want to try to run game. Marriage is a job, but you have to want to stay in it. I got your back. When you can't breathe, your spouse should be breathing for you. And I always did that. When my husband and I worked at the hospital together, I used to make sure he had his lunch, his breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He worked 2 jobs. In the morning time, I made sure that he had everything. We didn't live together. He had his own place. I had my own place. Okay? Sunday dinners, I would go over there to his house because my son was good and grown. I would go over to his house and we would have Sunday dinner, and I would just be there until Monday. When we both had to be to work early in the morning. I would make sure he had his breakfast, lunch, and his dinner. When he left that job, the morning job, where he worked from 7 to 3, he had to be at the next job at 4 o'clock. I made sure that he had his dinner already done. In between, when he was working at that job from 7 to 3, he had snacks and everything. Refrigerator was always packed. My locker was always packed with goodies and snacks and stuff for him because he had a strenuous job. You know what I'm saying? Where he was busy sometimes, or sometimes he couldn't step away, and it got hectic. Cause see, I worked in telecom, where I was a hospital operator back then, and I had to do all the hospital emergencies. We answered for the doctor's line. So our office was the heartbeat of the hospital. So we dealt with everybody, took all kinds of calls, and it was 24 hours. And he was a special police officer. So we worked hand in hand with each other. So anyway, we had our own little department where we had our bathroom inside of our office, and we was behind closed doors. So we didn't get out like that. Every now and then, it was 4 of us that was the operators. You know what I'm saying? We went down. Sometimes we'd go down to 2. Sometimes it'd be 1 operator at night. But anyway, we all worked hand in hand. So I always made sure, and I always took care. Whoever I dated, there was nothing they could say about me as far as like not taking care. I knew how to take care. But at the end of the day, when you show me that you don't care and you betray me, that's all I need. That's all I need. Especially when you try to put my life in danger. And I had a child on top of that. Yeah, that was a no-brainer. That was a wrap. I'm not going to let you play in my face. And I'm not going to let you do anything to harm me and my child. So yes, I've had experience dealing with African people, African men, and the females. Some of the females are okay, you know what I'm saying. But majority of the time, when I run up on some of them, they're not nice. So I just wanted to give you all that information. That yes, I've had experience dealing with African people, and it hasn't been pleasant most of the time. My son has a best friend, and his family is African. Nicest people that you ever want to meet. The mother, sweet as pie. So nice. So nice. Couple people. Matter of fact, he's got another friend. They're not best friends, but they grew up together. You know, they went to school together. And he's just as nice as he can be. I don't know about his parents, because I don't think they treated him right. But at the end of the day, he's a nice young man. So not everybody is jerks, but the majority of the time when I met the African culture, they haven't been as nice, haven't been as friendly. Okay, so that's why I say I know they have a problem with Black American people. At the end of the day, you should never judge anybody. You should always get to know them. Okay, I've been on here long enough, so I just wanted to give y'all that tip and tell you that little story that I had, because I was holding it in and I was tired of getting these comments about Africans and stuff. So yeah, I've had many experience dealing with Africans, especially in the in the working industry. So since y'all got so much problem with us, I want to know why y'all get these positions in the medical industry and you mistreat people. At the end of the day, I want to know why. Is it just so that you can get the money and send it back home, or to do what you want to do? Because at the end of the day, majority of y'all are not nice to people that need y'all care. Sometimes y'all are. Sometimes, majority of the time, you haven't been nice. That's in my experience. Think about that and let me know down below. Take care.